and I'm going to invite, then we're going to move the precedence of business. So that's been moved and seconded by myself and Councillor Fletcher. I will put that. All in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried.
I had my hand up. So my understanding is that the various local boards have an opportunity to speak first.
We're going to hear from the Waitakere local board, councillor.
But other local boards?
Well, I didn't have any other applications, and at
Yes,
this
you
stage...
did.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Councillor
Yeah.
Walker needs to understand that a
not a
last-minute
point of order.
request
not a point of order.
from a local board is not within standing orders.
Oh,
It's a 2
We
days,
are
councillor.
getting very enthusiastic with our use of standing orders, and we are going to keep some modicum of control in here. I'm sure the issues that would have been raised by the other board will be well canvassed and well raised by the Waitakere Rangers board, who are the board most directly involved in this. So, Sandra, would you like to join us? I'm not too sure if Saffron and Greg and Steve are coming up as well. Warm welcome, and you've got 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair and councillors, for listening to us. We'll try and be really quick. We've got a lot to get through. Thank you, first of all, to the Council's Parks Committee and Chair Christine Fletcher for listening to us at the emergency when this erupted. Thanks to the Environment, Climate Change, Natural Heritage Committee, Chair Wayne Walker, for hearing us. Thank you to all the councillors at both of those meetings for hearing us and understanding the seriousness of the situation relating to public confidence and the fate of these 2 ancient trees in our ecosystem. This has been incredibly traumatising for our community, who've worked really hard to prevent this open slather felling of ancient trees in an area recognised as very, very high value, and in an area that sits within the Waitakere Rangers Heritage Area, recognised under the Waitakere Rangers Heritage Area Act 2008. On Friday, the chainsaws came at Pataroa Road and steadily cut down tree after tree after tree. Cody from 80 to 100 to 120 years old, and it was deafening sound. They stopped short at these ancient trees, which we all know about. They've been in the media, they've captured the hearts and imagination of the country, and the group of 300 or so protesters, many more that have dribbled in and out over the time this last week, is backed up by thousands and thousands of New Zealanders. Cody is a very, very iconic species. It is in the heart of most of us, I would say, as New Zealanders, and also it can't be understated the importance to tangata whenua. On Saturday morning, the silence was deafening at Pataroa Road. The birds were not there. This is a more than minor effect to our ecosystem. This week, that gap in the sound was filled by people coming together and talking about how we're going to do something about these changes. I just want to quickly talk about the amount of money and resource that council puts into Kauri dieback, and that the local board has done. We've by allowing this open slather, we are setting a very bad double standard. And the public feel locked out of the discussion. I'm going to hand over to Sandra Coney, our chair.
Greetings, everybody. I'd just like to, Saffron's our environmental portfolio holder. To my left, I've got Greg Preslin, who's our RMA portfolio holder, and Steve Tolstrup, who's another board member. There were 3 things that I want to cover, Madam Chair, and I hope you will be liberal in your interpretation of 5 minutes. First is the board's...
5 minutes.
The first is the board's role in this. The second thing I want to talk about is Kauri dieback. And the third thing is to talk about are there solutions. When local boards get resource consents, we can provide feedback. So the consents team will send us a resource consent they think we'll be interested in, and we can provide feedback on that. Or we get a schedule every week of every resource consent application in the whole region, and we can ask for ones. But I'm always on the lookout for the trees in our area. Very often it just comes through removal of vegetation, removal of trees. It actually doesn't have enough detail to know whether this is something we should be looking at or not. And this is particularly so historically at the beginning of the term, this term of council. So when it came to 42 Pataroa, we were not asked for feedback. We've looked back through the schedules of resource consent applications and we can't find it there either. We were alerted by members of the public who were very concerned about it. We expressed our concerns both to Auckland Transport and to the consents team, and I've got a whole, I know that this might be a little contentious matter. I mean, some things were mentioned in the resource consent reports themselves, but I have a wodge of emails here that went back between the board and the consents team raising issues through this process last year. We raised concerns with the consents team, and we actually followed up with a meeting with the consents team to talk about how they were processing applications in the heritage area, because we were very concerned, and we expressed this to Heather Harris, the manager of the consents department at that time, that we couldn't see that in this case or in other cases the heritage area was being properly given consideration in the process. We also had many concerns about kauri dieback, and as a result of discussions with the biosecurity manager, we set up a process whereby if I saw a consent application that looked like it should go to the biosecurity department, I sent it to the manager of the biosecurity department, because they were not getting them, they were not being involved consistently by the consents department. So it was a bit of a Mickey Mouse thing, and there should have been a better process, and I believe now there is a better process, but we were working these things through in 2014. With 40 Pataroa Road, which came along a little later in the year, we were consulted and we did express our concerns. In both cases, we supported notification. We supported the review of the notification decision for number 42 and expressed that to the consents department. Consequently, we've been rather upset at statements in the media that imply that we kind of knew about everything and agreed and even endorsed it, and particularly a written media statement that was put out on 10th of March. I have to say we weren't consulted, so the facts are we were not consulted on 42 Pataroa Road. We were consulted on 40 Pataroa Road and expressed a great deal of concern. We supported notification in both cases. I would have thought, given that our local board's mentioned in the media release, there would have been some liaison with our local board about what was being said. There wasn't. So we saw it at the same time as any other member of the public saw it. If we as a local board tried to put out a media release through our communications department, believe me, the governing body and the council, the whole council would have been involved. So we're disappointed that that was put out that way with its implied criticism of the board. So I just want you to be really straight about the fact that we were not asked to provide feedback on 42 Pataroa Road. We were asked for 40 later in the year, and we provided that feedback, but it certainly was not in any way supporting the application. Just finally on that issue, we would support any moves made by the council to resolve the issue. Now I wanted to turn my attention to the issue of kauri dieback, because I don't really think that this has had enough attention. This whole area of Titirangi has got kauri dieback in it. In fact, you can stand on the road edge looking down onto these sites and you can see the staghorns of a dead kauri further down the slope. The application for 40 Pataroa involved the removal of 24 native trees. And that included a kauri that is variously described in the reports from officers and in the resource consent decision as mature kauri, a large kauri, or a notable kauri. So just for those of you who haven't been there, don't make any mistake, that's a photo of it up there with the cross on it. It's hard to take a photo of the tree because you don't want to trample around it, and it's still surrounded by some bush. I do want to read to you what the council's ecologist Martin Sharp and the council's arborist Natalie Marsden had to say about this tree, in the officer's recommendation report where they agreed that it could be removed. I'm reading from the report. Mr. Sharp acknowledges that it may be possible to build in a location beyond the large kauri, but that this would potentially compromise the retention of 2 large puriri trees located to the northwest of the building platform. Mr. Sharp acknowledges the site's location within the bush living environment, and while the loss of the large kauri is regrettable, he considers that sufficient vegetation would be retained to maintain linkages through the site, enabling the continued movement of native fauna. He then goes on to discuss, and I won't read this part out, that both the sections are entirely covered by a significant ecological area. He concluded, Mr. Sharp concluded, overall the clearance of 280 square metres of well-established native vegetation of moderate ecological quality and removal of 1 notable kauri would have a minor effect on ecosystems. There was discussion about this. Could the building be lower on the site, which would avoid the removal of the tree? And Ms. Marsden, who is the council's arborist, Natalie Marsden, quote, said, the tree's stability may be affected by the removal of surrounding vegetation, leading to an increase in wind throw effects on the crown, which has established itself in a more protective wind environment in a stand. Its sudden exposure may lead to decline and instability effects in a location above a dwelling and has the potential for a hazard assessment of low probability, high impact situation. In summary, the effects of the proposed development with respect to the protective vegetation environment will be no more than minor, provided all conditions of consent are adopted. So what this means is it's sort of for its own sake that the tree may be affected by development lower on the site.
You have to kill the tree to save it.
That's correct. So in the board's view, in recommending the removal of this tree, the council's planners clearly made a blunder that even they seem to have had some reservations about. The word regrettable is used through the documents probably about half a dozen times. I just want to talk about kauri dieback. And these reports are an example of how badly the council has been performing over the issue of kauri dieback. It is a significant area of deficiency in the report. There has been no assessment of the kauri trees on the site for kauri dieback. It's not known if they're infected or not. So the response to that was to say that the removal of the trees must be done according to the hygiene standards set by the council. That is, to treat them as if they were infected, so they weren't going to be trucked across Auckland. They needed to be dealt with on the site. So the trees were to be dragged up onto the roadside, chipped, and then all the chip material, which would be considerable, put back on the site. A huge amount of material would go back onto the site. Now, I mentioned that you can actually see diseased trees further down the site. So potentially this is infected material, and given the gradient of that site, it's only going to chipped material is only going to move downhill over time. The impact of spreading that amount of chipped, infected kauri material on the site, that isn't evaluated. There's no mention of that anywhere in the reports. I understand the biosecurity team were barely, if at all, involved in this consent. There's no mention here of any reports from our kauri specialists in the council who have considerable scientific and other experience with kauri dieback. I understand they have not been on the site because the owner would not permit it, so there's been no testing of the trees or the soil. As has been raised by an expert in the Herald, the disease status of this tree is important because this tree may have something to tell us about resistance and immunity to the disease, given that it has other infected trees nearby. I wanted to bring to your attention the kauri trees in the road reserve. The local board was shocked that Auckland Transport gave permission for access to the site over the road reserve between two mature kauri trees, which we don't know whether they're infected or not, over their root systems. Kauris hate interference. I mean, that's one of the messages that we give through kauri dieback. Don't walk around the root systems, don't put your driveways over the root systems, keep away from the trees. And Auckland Transport and the Consents Department sanctioned the main access to be between these two big kauri trees, and also the building of permanent structures in the road reserve within the drip line of one of the trees. So I've got a couple of photos, if we could just
Point of order, Madam Chair. I know that we're going on Waitakeri's time.
Yep, I think
it's well
Sandra's
over.
just
I am
bringing
winding
it,
up.
she is.
Yes.
That's fine, let's just find a bit of
Move
generosity
an
in
extension
our
of time.
hearts.
I'll second.
No, we don't,
Already
that's
been.
fine, I'm not going to, let's not get carried away.
Well,
Sandra,
if
back
we
to
need to, we
you.
can.
Okay, so this is the tree in question that has got the gentleman up it. If we could just move on to the next one, if you could shift it on. I'm hopeless with these things. So I didn't sort of have a chance to go down and take more photographs of the tree to show more clearly.
Small tree, isn't it?
But that gathering there, on the right, you can see one of the two kauri in the road reserve. And you can see the size of that tree. It is a magnificent specimen, and the two trees in the road reserve are acknowledged as being the best specimens in the whole of Pateroa Road. If we could move on to the next one. This is the crown of one of the trees in the road reserve.
Stunning.
Just move on again, thanks. And that's just a bit of a close-up that I took of it. So we're really concerned about the health of these trees, both in terms of the works to be done on the site and the access going over the roots of the trees. And we're also concerned about the impact of permanent structures in the road reserves, and none of this is considered in the resource consent, none of it. Auckland Transport actually owns these two trees, so we're talking about a tree owned by Mr. Lenihan, and we're talking about two trees owned by Auckland Council. So the local board is requesting that the council halts all work on the site while the disease status, the trees in the site are assessed for kauri dieback. We think it's essential that that assessment is carried out before any further work occurs on the site, and acknowledging that what is found from that may lead to some change. I would like to see some advice from our biosecurity team once they've got that information of how the council could proceed. Finally, just want to talk a little bit about what council can do now, and we were very heartened to see the Mayor last night on the television and hear this morning that the Mayor is in discussions, or the council's in discussions with the developer. And I would remind you of the beginning of the first term of this council started in a similar way, when the community at St Heliers Bay was very aggrieved at the removal of 3 Spanish mission houses at St Heliers Bay, and the Mayor did sit down with the developer and discuss alternatives. That one didn't prove to be doable, but we believe this one is much more doable. There is room on the site for that house to be positioned elsewhere. Ironically, the permission from Auckland Transport to allow the building of the garages and partly on the road reserve and the access through the road reserve actually has facilitated the potential loss of the very large privately owned kauri. So I think the council has a special responsibility to try and remedy the matter in such a way that all 3 kauri trees are protected. Thank you. We answer any questions.
Thank you. We've probably got time for a couple of quick questions, if need be. Councillor Walker.
Can you just repeat the request that you made around the halt to work and the reasons for it?
We're looking at work to be halted while the council carries out, our council kauri dieback team carries out an assessment of the site and the road reserve and the trees, the kauri trees that are affected, for their health and their status as to kauri dieback. and to receive some advice from them on how the council could proceed now, because I think this is actually an area of quite a lot of expertise. If you read the Herald article from the expert at Auckland University yesterday, I don't know what that advice would be, but I think that the council needs to have that advice before it blunders in and allows the removal of potentially healthy or trees that have got better immunity to Kauri dieback, or spreads Kauri dieback on the site or off the site.